This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
Robin Dreeke is with us, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. We are talking about the Parkland shooting case. We're not talking about the shooter, though, because someone else is going on trial here in the next week or two. Jury selection has just begun for Scott Peterson. Not that other Scott Peterson or the other Scott Peterson, but this Scott Peterson. A lot of Scott Petersons out there. Scott was the school resource officer at the Parkland school who can be seen on video camera not entering the school as an active shooter went through and blew away multiple students and did not enter the building. I've watched his interviews. I've heard some his testimony that he's given publicly. This is an interesting case. You watch the guy and you feel, he clearly looks like he has a lot of remorse for what happened.
Oh my God, yeah.
As far as his story, I don't know. I mean, once you dig in on that one, I don't think you can really dig yourself back out. So you're going to have to stick with it. That's just my opinion. What's your thoughts on this going forward with the resource officer now being charged?
This is one of the most tragic things I've ever seen on every single level. Mm-hmm. First of all, the students. That was horrendous, and it's horrendous and tragic that you had someone that could have done something but didn't do something. Mm-hmm. And I look at it because you all know me. I have that 30,000 foot optic.
Yeah.
So I'm looking behaviorally. So let's look behaviorally at why didn't he do something? Mm-hmm. He didn't do something because he didn't feel safe in himself. He didn't trust himself to be able to do something. So why wouldn't you trust yourself to be able to do something in a situation like that? Well, that does come back to training. It comes back to reps. It comes back to experiences. It comes back to also to maybe verbal and written obligations you should or shouldn't have. I really thought about this. What would make a difference with a school resource officer in this type of situation? Human beings, we get emotionally connected to oaths, to obligations we either verbally or put in writing. And when you take an oath as a police officer, support and defend the Constitution of the United States, protect the community and all those types of things. But I think a school resource officer should have an additional oath in this, and that is to protect the children at all costs, mm-hmm. because that might have made a difference in him, because this is a trial where he's being on trial for being a coward.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at, again, I'm more on the lines of how do we not let this happen again? And so I'm on the fix it side.
Well,
because it is a tragedy. I
agree. I mean, I'm always, it doesn't make a lot of sense other than to stop the repetition of behavior, to, constantly beat the dead horse or something that's already happened. But after this took place, we had Uvalde, which was, it was 10 times worse, 400 times worse, because you had 400 officers that time. That was almost, just, I don't want to say comical, but to have 400 people outside the building.
So Tony, these actually, so again, without being the person on the ground doing it, without being part of the departments, in general, when you have people that are fearful to take action, it's exactly that. They're fearful to take action because people fear innovation. And when you fear to innovate to solve a problem, in other words, if you have a standard operating procedure that you're adhering to, mm-hmm. and you're restricted to only do that because you fear going outside that standard operating procedure, that means you're not going to innovate. Because when you're facing chaos, the SOP, the standard operating procedure, only brings you to the door front. From that point on, you have to innovate. And if you don't feel safe that you can innovate to solve the problem and save yourself, you're not going to innovate. And so I still think there's a lot of things that have gone wrong in a lot of these areas, but one of them, I'm a big believer in, you got to hold the top accountable for an unsafe culture where people don't feel safe to innovate. And that actually starts with our society. Yeah. If cops don't feel safe protecting us, that's a problem. So wherever these breakdowns happen, I think it's part of the after action in all these areas and all these departments is looking at why didn't the cops feel safe to take the actions they needed to do to do what their primary mission in life is, and that's save lives.
And I think it's interesting, especially when we talk about some of these cases. More specifically, even is the Uvalde, because I don't know that a lot of those officers were afraid of going and taking down the shooter. I think they were more afraid of breaking rank, and they were afraid of going against an order.
Groupthink.
Yeah, and it happened in mass. That's kind of the feeling I get with a lot of that. We even saw it in some of the video where you did have an officer that tried to break rank and try and go in, and they physically stopped the officer from doing that. Other officers, it was ridiculous. But I mean, why do, especially with something like this, we don't think of that happening necessarily with law enforcement officers. We think of them being brave, going into the situation. Has there been a breakdown at some point where this is no longer the case when it comes to having that responsibility as part of your job?
Well, that could, because they had groupthink going on there and fear to break ranks from the group. Whoever was at the top making that call and decision was the one person that had that wrong thought about, we're not going to do this. Yeah. And because there's fear of everyone else from breaking rank for whatever reason, then you're going to get the groupthink in mass not taking action. And I recently had someone on my show the other day that, we were talking about the power and the horribleness of groupthink, because the more people you have involved in a decision, the worse that decision generally is.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is. And you're exactly right. That's a very, very accurate statement. It's just so troubling to see what we're doing with some of this. I mean, I agree. I think that he should be tried, in my personal opinion. Yeah. But I guess the question is, do I want him to be tried because we're searching for a villain, and we obviously, the killer's arrested. We already have that, but we've created another villain because of our amount of anger here at a situation like this. But at the same point, he did put himself into that situation to be villainized. Is prosecuting someone like this, putting this old man who's, he's retired, away for the rest of his life, is that going to make an impact on anything? Is that going to set an example that everybody likes to say when somebody gets what they have coming to them and actually change or make an impact on other departments where this sort of thing could be faced at some point in time?
I don't think so. That's why there's such a tragedy when this is there's no good that's going to come from that one. I mean, it's just horrible. I feel for him. I feel worse for the families. I feel for all the people in our society that's trying to heal their pain by inflicting more pain on someone who is a coward. Yeah. And I don't use the term loosely or flippantly like that, because there's a lot of definitions people can use for bravery and cowardice, but he didn't take action when he clearly needed to, could have, and should have taken action. And there's a lot of reasons that go behind a human psyche about why we do or don't do those things. And he was definitely the wrong person for the position he had. There's no doubt.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Brueski.
Robin Dreeke, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. Thank you, as always, for coming on and giving us your insight. Robin's website is peopleformula.com. You can check out his best-selling books, his podcast, and so much more there. Do check that out at peopleformula.com. If you like this podcast, be sure to press subscribe wherever you're downloading so you don't miss any breaking updates and discussions on the cases that we follow for you right here. I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.